So in this video, I just want to talk about necessary movement, or if you like, unnecessary movement. And it always surprises me because what tends to happen is when people reach out for golf lessons, either come through this door here for a lesson or whether they reach out for help online, is that most people tend to have a list of things that they're sort of aware of. They're videos that they've watched, or there might be lessons they've had in the past, or whatever it might be. But the list can be anything between 5 to 10 points, maybe even longer. I've had students come through the door with pages and pages of information. Now, the fact of the matter is that in the golf swing, you can have characteristics. So there are things that can look a certain way that don't actually affect the result as much as we're told in terms of from maybe a coaching narrative. However, there are also things in the golf swing which are absolutely going to ruin your chance of any sort of consistency. Now, the easiest way to identify whether you're somebody who's most likely going to have this problem is by being aware of your impact position. Now, what I mean by this is you've either had lessons and you've seen your swing, you either video your golf swing so you've seen your swing from face on, or the most latter one is that maybe you head towards the driving range and sometimes that you notice that somebody who is of a similar build ilk to you produces much more efficiency out of the ball flight than you do. And the reason for this is because you would be classed as a scooper. Somebody who is a scooper basically means that the club head is overtaking the hands in the hitting area, which is doing things like adding loft towards your delivery instead of potentially de-lofting the club where the hands are staying forward. De-lofting the club is the kind of thing that we're after on a multitude of features. More distance, obviously, more club face stability, better chance of controlling things like your low point. So the reason why we see pros and good golfers here and we see poor, inconsistent amateurs like here is most likely because of the reason that I'm going to talk about now. So what should happen in the backswing position? Rotate, try and turn a rotation to sort of 90 degrees, reference to things like the shoulders. But we also want to do that while, should we say, keeping our head pretty still. Now, when we move like so I keep my head still and trigger a nice rotation, this helps us get our angles correct. So it basically means that you're going to learn how to rotate over the golf ball. That's important to understand first and foremost. But the crucial part of it then is, well, what are you supposed to do with your arms? And what tends to happen is most golfers get their arms too close towards their body. So first of all, let's talk about how you should be trying to move. So if I bring my lead arm out in front of me, and then I get my fingertips in line with my sternum, similar to what I'm demonstrating here, I'm just going to put my right hand in between my sort of left pec and my upper arm to try and ensure that this doesn't get any closer, right? And then all I'm going to do is I'm just going to rotate back and then lift my lead arm up in the air so my lead arm is roughly through my shoulder line. Now that's theoretically as close as your lead arm should ever get as to your body, meaning my left arm shouldn't get any closer to my chest than what I've already demonstrated, like so. Now, what you would then want to do is just put your trail hand so that it's basically supporting that type of position. So you can see the way my trail forearm is perpendicular to that would help me drop the club down. So if in essence, the thing that surprises most of my students is how their left arm doesn't need to get as close as you potentially think. So theoretically, in my golf swing, if I swing back where I don't allow my arm to get unnecessarily close, as I now pull my lead side down, can you see the way that I can straighten my trail arm, get my hands over the golf ball and produce a good impact position? Now, what tends to happen for golfers who get the lead arm too close is that your hands get too lost. Your right arm now is out of position. Instead of being able to sort of perpendicular support the club, it gets trapped like so. So then as you start the downswing, you're uncertain of how to start the downswing, because if you try and rotate, it'll produce steepness. So you'll go, okay, well, it works better if I throw my arms down. But then you look at it and you're standing up. And then the problem is if you're standing up and you're moving however you shouldn't be moving, you're always going to be producing a scoopy type action. Now, what tends to happen, and I do keep my very close eye on YouTube comments and things like that, and people do reach out, is that what seems to happen sometimes is people very much respond very well to the video and then they'll go and practice it, and then they'll come back months later or weeks later saying that they tried it and it didn't quite work. So my last little point here is, and I do this with all my students, the priority in the list of order that you should practice in my opinion, would be get your basics good, get your rotation in the backswing good, get your arms in the backswing good, and then you can synchronize the downswing. The reason why it's so important is, I alluded to it briefly earlier, is that when I swing back, if I pivot poorly, which means, shall I say, I move my head too much this way, can you see the way that my rotation is too flat? So if I'm excessively flat in this type of position, then the problem is that it moves my trail shoulder. So if I then, do you see what I mean? It's going to affect my arms. The likelihood is from this position, I'm not going to be in a good position to support the club as we should do. And what I tend to see is golfers get excessively sort of off the ball and flat. And then that would bring the club around here. So then they have to lift the club up and they end up with very poor arm structure and a poor pivot, which is obviously problematic. So that's what I would do. I would, first of all, check your basics, check your backswing pivot, because obviously when you pivot correctly, which means you keep your head still and rotate, what it does is it creates more of a tilt. And when you create more of a tilt, your trail shoulder will obviously be in a different location, which is now going to get you into the position where you can bring your arms into play. So it's very important that if you want to avoid any unnecessary movement, that you do follow that sort of order, in my opinion. Basics, backswing rotation, then your arm structure, which should really help you out. See you soon.